What is a communication clause? It sets boundaries and expectations for the parties communicating throughout the duration of the contract period. The clause is really one that needs to be in every single contract. It serves both parties, right? Hey there, I'm Paige Griffith, your host and an attorney for small business owners. I help online businesses and creatives get legally legit in no time. This podcast is all about the legal and the Paige behind it. I'll break down and simplify legal talk while providing practical business guidance every step of the way. And after over a decade in the entrepreneur space and becoming a mother, I'll also be sprinkling in tips for running a business and giving you a glimpse behind the scenes of what life's really like. As a gentle reminder and disclaimer, I am an attorney, but I am not your attorney. So be sure to seek legal counsel for personalized advice. Welcome to the Legal Paige Podcast. I'm going to start off by reading a direct post that was made in the TOP community on Facebook. So in our private Facebook group, there are thousands of other business owners in there. And this particular question came from a wedding planner. She says, I use the TOP wedding planning contract. I have a client who I believe is about to claim breach of contract because of a failure of my associate wedding planner to respond within 48 hours while on vacation. She let the clients know about this vacation in advance, and everything that needs to be done up until this point is, in fact, ahead of schedule in my experience. This client seems to be extremely petty and is looking for an excuse to get out of the contract. The problem is that the wedding is less than 60 days out, so nearly all of our work has been completed already, besides day of stuff. And further, the associate is traveling across the country to this wedding, so travel is already booked and non-refundable at this point. She also said, I personally messed up and didn't charge travel fees, so I'm already eating that cost as a business. Then she goes on to say, since technically the communication clause doesn't have an exemption for holidays or vacation, is it a breach of contract that the associate didn't respond within 48 hours? If the client is wishing to cancel, am I able to still charge the remaining balance? Since our contract states that we can charge that if canceled less than 60 days out. Further, we've already completed nearly 80% of our service since nearly everything is completely ready to go for the wedding day. Okay, the thing about this post is we had tons of people comment on it. And then I commented on it with my legal perspective, and that's what I really want to share here in this episode. But let's just talk about triggers. Like, why would this get so much attention in our Facebook group? First and foremost, every service-based contract usually has a communication clause. What is a communication clause? It sets boundaries and expectations for the parties communicating throughout the duration of the contract period. So for you as a wedding planner, it would state your office hours, your typical response time for emails, and it informs your clients that you answer primarily through email, and that is your preferred method of communication. The clause is really one that needs to be in every single contract, as I mentioned, and it serves both parties, right? From a client's perspective, they know that they need to respond to your emails and communications within a certain period of time. That helps you, especially as a wedding planner, move forward with all of the tasks at hand. And vice versa. Your clients also expect prompt communication from you, especially as a wedding planner. But here, the biggest issue was whether it constitutes a full breach of contract, like a material breach of contract, whereby the client could legitimately cancel and get out of the contract. When in fact, and this was a trigger here for many service providers that have clients that just want to get out of a contract, they're trying to find something to be able to do so without any liability or harm on their end. Let me first give you my legal perspective on this. First and foremost, this is not a material breach whatsoever. And your services or performance has not been affected. So they have no valid breach of contract claims. And then I also want to be clear here. This person said that their associate notified them of the vacation. So as long as you communicate with your clients that you would be off of email, you're totally in the clear here. But even if you didn't, I recommend always explaining to your clients why the response was delayed. Because if they make an issue at it, you can guide them through the cancellation process and how they would forfeit all monies paid, since this is not a material breach. Also, just getting that in writing, why the response time was delayed and that it was for a legitimate reason, that you were on vacation. Good news here is this particular wedding planner, the associate wedding planner, did inform the client. So it sounds like they have that in writing. So you're good to go here. The client is never, ever going to be able to claim breach of contract, but it's just like such a petty thing that a client is trying to do to get out of a valid agreement that they signed. And then the next thing that I really want to talk about here is what a communication clause should look like in a wedding planner contract and how we have modified it for wedding planners specifically, but then what it kind of looks like for all other service providers. So a general communication clause is going to say, your company's office hours are X. What are they? Monday through Thursday, Monday through Friday, 9 to 4, 10 to 3. Like when are you in the office that they can expect a response time? Set clear expectations from your clients. Don't let them think that you're going to respond at 8 p.m. at night if you're with your family and you shouldn't be responding to business emails at 8 p.m. at night. Of course, as a wedding planner, it's kind of a different scenario. If you're like closer to the wedding, you're 14 days out or 7 days out, you may communicate a little bit differently. But again, this is base foundational language that needs to be in your communication clause. And then you can always over deliver above and beyond that. Then your communication clause should state something regarding your primary source of communication is through your email. The reason being is it's just much easier for documentation and proof purposes. If you have to scroll through DMs or you have to scroll through text messages and try to figure out where this communication was happening, that's just a mess for everybody involved. Then you want to say, okay, the company will respond to clients' emails within those office hours and no more than, usually we say 72 hours after the client emails the company, just as a starting base. Again, this is a bracketed yellow highlight information in our template clause. And so you reserve the right to change this to whatever amount of time you deem reasonable here. Is it 5 business days? Is it 10 business days? I mean, that sounds a little aggressive for a wedding planner because that's what we're talking about specifically here. But maybe it is if you're a videographer, right? Like maybe you don't need to be communicating with your clients too much. And it just depends on the services you're providing. Okay. So then you could add in here, and this is where there was like a heated kind of back and forth debate in our Facebook group over, should you broaden this? Should you say like this excludes holidays and vacations? I think you would actually want to leave it pretty broad. You could say something like, and no more than 72 hours after client emails planner, right? That's when planner will respond, comma, unless as otherwise notified by planner. That's like more of a catch-all provision here that you could add in, or just literally, I think that's like, 5 to 7 words that would allow you to have multiple reasons behind why you might not typically respond within those 72 hours. I still think you need to have timing here because clients' expectations and your expectations are really, really good to overly convey in contractual language. Then in other service contracts, a lot of times for the wedding and event industry in particular, I always say that the end of this clause needs to say something along the lines of, hey, I'm willing to give you my personal, phone number or business phone number within, say, 7 days of the wedding or event date or 14 days of the wedding or event date so that clients can text or call you if there's any immediate issues related to the event that they need to be resolved, within due time. That is also like a really good catch-all for, hey, client, I prefer email for, the main majority of our contractual period together. But I know that you want access to me closer to the wedding and event date, and I'm going to give that to you. And here's the expectation on this. I just love communication clauses for this reason. It's also really good to point to as a service provider, because if, say, your client emails you on a Saturday afternoon, or maybe doesn't even email. What if they DM you on a Saturday afternoon and you happen to be on Instagram and you see it? You could just respond back, I got your note. please email me. And if you email me, I will absolutely get back to you on Monday when I'm back in the office. It's like reiterating your communication clause, and that type of thing in written format goes to show that you're upholding your communication clause in your contract.
Attention all service industry business owners. Are you absolutely certain your current contract has you protected and set up for success? I've got some game-changing news for you. I've created a free checklist with all the essential clauses that you will need in your service industry contract. From force majeure to severability, cancellation to rescheduling, transferability, and even venue and jurisdiction. I've covered it all to make sure you stay protected and set for success. Don't take any chances with your business's future. Head over to Instagram and DM me the word checklist to grab your free guide. That's right. Just go over to TheLegal, PAIGE on Instagram and DM me the word checklist. With this checklist in hand, you'll have the confidence to never get in a pickle with a client and ensure your business is 100% safeguarded.
And then the last thing here that I'll say legally is for wedding planners in particular, we had a big issue come up a few years ago with ghosting, client ghosting, and like what happens from a planner's perspective. Can you unilaterally terminate the contract? So within wedding planner contracts specifically, we added in big, bold, conspicuous language, all uppercase, that basically says the clients understand and agree that it's their responsibility to respond to the planner within a certain period of time to ensure that there's not a breakdown of communication, right? Because if the planner doesn't receive a response time from the clients within that period, then it says the procedures that the planner will do. It'll notify the clients probably 2 or 3 additional times, depending on your business practices, in writing. So you have those as evidence and proof that you requested their response multiple times. And then if you don't receive a response within, say 24 hours after the final request from you as the planner, that you, in your sole discretion, can unilaterally terminate the agreement and retain all monies paid as liquidated damages and go seek payment for any outstanding services performed that's not been paid by the clients and take them to collections. This is so important to have in a wedding planning contract. And we have had this approved and reviewed as bold, conspicuous language in a communication clause by a lot of educators in the wedding planning space. Now, I do want to talk about one response to this Facebook post that I think needs a little bit more attention. So someone responded, well, my communication clause only talks about the client's responsibility to respond within the time frame, not my own. And that 2 reminders are required without response as well to be able to cancel, kind of similar to what I just talked about in the wedding photography contract. And they mentioned mine is also the TLP contract, but I've just adjusted it to my business practices as well as what my lawyer suggested. The biggest statement is that I can seek payment for any services performed that have not yet been paid if there is a breakdown of communication and I have to terminate. So I would assume that you would be able to agree to terminate if they remit payment for services completed to this point. The main thing here about this response is she didn't put a timeline on her response time. And I don't love that because it feels very, very one-sided in terms of the services you're performing and client expectations and clients' responsibilities here, where, okay, like I as the client have to uphold a 72-hour turnaround response time, but I'm hiring this person for this service and they should be able to respond to me within a reasonable time as well. Of course, other people were triggered by the fact that they felt after multiple years in business and using a specific contract like the TLP one, they've never had someone be that petty when it was a pre-communicated vacation. And I agree with that. I'm assuming here you probably, if the communication clause isn't our specific robust communication clause, that you wouldn't be able to collect for services already rendered. I'm not saying that is 100% true. I'm sure there's ways around it. But if your client is trying to cancel, this is one of the reasons that wedding planners and like elopement photographers, people who have planning services involved, and a lot of services that happen throughout the duration of the contract. And it's not just the retainer payment made to book X services on that date and then you don't perform really any services until the date. That's really hard to like keep all of those fees or seek payment, right, for services that haven't been rendered if they haven't paid you. But for wedding planners and people who are doing services throughout the duration, this is why I recommend installment payments. Because in a fee and retainer clause, then, and these kind of coincide together, if there's a breakdown of communication and it's like not working out and there's ghosting happening, say that's, the hypothetical I'm bringing to you right now. And then the fee and retainer clause then is also triggered where all of the installment payments are then deemed liquidated damages because the services have already been rendered. You would be able to keep all fees paid without further liability or potential legal, claims made by your client. This was just one of those situations that I wanted to clarify. I wanted to explain why a communication clause is in there, additional verbiage that you could add to your communication clause. If you don't have a communication clause in your existing contract right now, maybe you don't have a TLP contract, or maybe you have one of our older versions of our contract and you need to go look at one of the more newer versions that we've sent out to you. Go look in your TLP customer account. You get access to all future updates. So we have updated most communication clauses in all contracts. So go look at the most up-to-date version. And we sell this clause a la carte. So if you're needing a more robust communication clause, you can purchase it a la carte from thelegalpage.com. And if you're looking for a full-blown wedding planning contract that has 30 to 40 clauses in it, covering every situation that I just talked about, and of course, much, much more, we have the full-length wedding planning contract as well. And then the last thing that I'll say is over-communicate. Over-communicate in email to get that documentation and proof of notifying clients of changes, that you will be on vacation, because that also counts as a contract, not a verbal contract, right? Because it's between email communications. It actually could be a legitimate amendment to the contract, so to speak, or addendum to the contract if it was above and beyond the scope of a clause. And so especially if your associate also here in this situation had an out of office auto response on as well, that's not blatant ignoring. And if you can show receipt of an out of office response, another reason why you should have an out of office automatic response, for documentation purposes, that your clients knew you would respond, that if they needed to communicate with the lead planner or somebody else, here's an alternate email or an alternate phone call while you're out of office, especially in an associate situation. And then again, it's just not a material breach. It doesn't affect services whatsoever. No judge or arbiter or anyone interpreting the contract is going to see it as such. So if they were to claim breach of contract, you would be in the clear here. Moving forward from this specific situation, try to figure out a mutual ground here. Do you want to work with this client more? Are they wanting to cancel and you kind of agree that maybe you guys aren't the best fit? How would you go about that? Maybe, they're released from any future payments. You keep all payments made. That makes them feel good so that they don't have to pay you anymore. And then you can just move on. I think this particular person felt like they had done so much up to the point of this client starting to get a little bit petty and, having signs of potential cancellation, that she was nervous that she wouldn't get paid for services already rendered. And that is where you have to choose your best course forward as a service provider, how it's a facts and circumstances situation. It's, do you really want to go forward with this wedding? Do you want to pass it off to someone else? Could you find, maybe they just weren't happy with the associate they were working with. Maybe you just need to communicate again, get on a phone call in a different means of communication here, get on a Zoom call, get on a phone call, record that, of course, for documentation purposes, and just say, hey, what's going on here? How can we make this work? Because we've done this amount of services up to this point. We're, 30 days or 60 days out from, your event date. And we would like to, perform all of the services to the best of our ability here. We feel like we have. This was just, a minor delay in communication. And we communicated that to you with, an out of office automatic response or an actual email from the associate that they're going to be out of office. Yeah. So in summary, you can modify your communication clause to your specific business practices. You can add in that additional language that I talked about where it was comma, unless as otherwise notified by the company or by the planner, just to make it a little bit more general that it may change beyond the quoted 72 hours in very limited circumstances. And you can adjust contracts that were already signed by clients. I mean, you can, but it would be hard to. So this person was like, well, can I amend this clause and send it back to them and sign like, whoa. Like, slow your roll. These clients are probably not going to sign an amendment to a contract that they already signed if they're already feeling like a little antsy about the contract that they're in. And two, I just don't ever think it's a good look for a valid contract that's been signed by all parties to adjust it really in any way unless there is just some major error that you need to adjust that both the clients and you would be comfortable with signing that adjustment to the contract. But I would modify the clause for any future contracts that you send out to future clients. It's always a learning experience. Every client situation that pops up, I think we can all learn from in the service industry, particularly the wedding and event industry. It's high stakes in the industry that a lot of you are in, high emotions. A lot of times there's way more emotions involved than contractual language really at play here. And you can ease people's fears with your communication clause, but then overly communicating and over delivering in various forms of communication with your clients. I hope you found this episode helpful. Very, very short episode for you. And if you have any additional questions about your communication clause, or if it would, behoove you to update your communication clause with our a la carte clause or update your entire contract, you can certainly reach out to me on social media, or you can ask us in our Facebook group as well. I'd love to have you in there. If you're not, you'll be able to silently listen and see a lot of posts like this and then how people are commenting and, different takes in the industry and how people go about business. It's really, really insightful. And you can just type in TLP Community on Facebook and get access to this group. And I'll catch you in the next episode, my friend. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's show. Be sure to visit thelegalpage.com for contract templates, blogs, YouTube videos, and additional legal resources. If you haven't already, head over to iTunes and leave me a review and rating. It truly means so much to me to hear your feedback and inspires me to continue creating podcast content. Also, I want to personally invite you to my free Facebook group at tlpfacebook.com, where you will get access to me, my legal team, and thousands of other entrepreneurs in there for unlimited business and legal Q&A. Until next time, my friend.